welcome to another episode of This is Rico Trying to Heal My Inner Child. I am Rico. I'd like to remind everybody that I'm not a doctor, not a medical professional, and I'm not a therapist. Just a regular person trying to navigate through life and trying to navigate what's going on in here. It's still a mess. I mentioned in my last video that my subconscious is telling me that too. So I'm trying to work through things. I do notice that having talked about it made me feel a lot better. Having talked about it with my son made me feel better. It kind of helped me to get things out and sort of step back and take a look at it from the outside and, understand it a little bit more. And I got to say, being an empath is kind of tough. Feeling other people's feelings before they even tell you, before they even have any words, you already know how they feel. And today's a much better day. So I feel better. I feel a little bit better about talking about things and making these videos, getting some of this stuff out. But for this video, I want to get back to the topic of my work/jobs, my past experiences. And I'm kind of going through them one by one in chronological order and, dissecting them a little bit and trying to understand how my childhood experiences and how that all influenced me and influenced my reactions and interactions with people. Hindsight sometimes is 20/20, not always. But as far as this, it really does help me understand. I was talking about in the last video or the last couple of videos, I should say, talking about having jerky bosses, having plenty of superiority complex, having parents that treated me that way. It almost seemed normal. I always just kind of kept my mouth shut and just took the abuse, rolled with the punches. And I shouldn't have. I should have stood up. I should have stood up for myself and told everyone to take a hike. But I didn't, because I didn't know how to deal with conflict. There was no conflict resolution for me. I didn't know how to deal with confrontation unless I would get pushed to a point and then I would just explode. And that happened a lot. I didn't want to, but had I learned how to defend myself, had I learned how to resolve confliction and confrontation, I might have done a little bit better. But it is what it is. I keep saying that, but we're going to deal with it and try to work through it. So after working at the factory and taking some time off and having some babies at home, I took like 4 months off, and then we realized that it was just that we were struggling a little bit financially. So the boys were a little bit older. They were a little bit easier to handle. We had my former mother-in-law and sister-in-law were kind of available to watch them whenever we needed. And we kind of started working more or less opposite shifts. So there were some days where we didn't need anyone to watch them at all, because one of us would work in the morning and the other would work in the evening. Sometimes I joke that I think that's why the marriage lasted so long, because we had a schedule like that for a while and we didn't see each other as much. But, 2 ships passing in the night. And through my other former sister-in-law, I managed to get a job at a vending company. Just like all of them, I look back and I really wish I hadn't done that. I really, really wish I would have tried harder and looked for something else. But got a job filling vending machines. They would give you a truck, give you a route. The place was based in Valparaiso, but some of the places were way, way, way out. And I started out as just a helper. I would ride with this driver, ride with that driver, help them fill these dumb machines. And I think I can say again, this is one of the worst experiences of my life. Start time was 3 a.m. Start time was 3 a.m. and you were done when you were done. There was no set hours. If it took you 11 hours to fill these machines on one day and maybe 6 hours on the next, that's what you did. And it just seemed like all the other jobs where no matter how much you did, they wanted a little bit more. They wanted some more. They wanted some more. And again, the pay on this one was better than the last one, but not much. But I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Getting back to my job at the vending company, filling vending machines. You were all over the place. You would sometimes drive 40 minutes to get to one stop. And it was frustrating. But there was never really any encouragement. You were driving a truck, so you were kind of on your own. You didn't really have anyone to answer to when you were out there. But when you were out there and sometimes you're filling a machine, and people get really, really snarky about their snacks. Sometimes they would call and say that the machine was completely empty. Let's say the candy machine. The candy machine is completely empty. So we had pagers, and the boss would page us and call from a payphone because they had a 1-800 number, and he would say, hey, this stop called and said blah, blah, blah. So you would go there and check it out, and you would find out, yeah, the Snickers are up. Just one item was out. But they would call and make it seem like the worst thing ever, and the machine is empty, and we're starving, and there's nothing to eat here. And some of the coworkers were very difficult. Very difficult. I don't know how. There's one person in particular. I don't know how they managed to keep their job there. I don't know. I don't know if they came with the warehouse or what. Just like no matter what they did, they never had a route. They were always just a helper and never had anything good to say. Never. Never. Everything was a put down. So he would go with me sometimes, and it was exhausting to just have to keep arguing with this guy because he just wanted to talk you down. And I would get plenty of admonishment over the pettiest of things. Again, nobody sees the good. They only see the little bit of bad. So you could do 99% good and 1% bad, and they're only going to see that 1%. Again. And I hated this one. I hated it. But during the time that I was there, 9/11 happened. And once that happened, the world changed. Or I should say the nation changed. Everything changed. Suddenly nobody had money for snacks anymore. I don't know if they were giving to surviving families of the victims. I don't know. I don't know where people were spending their money, or if they were just saving it because maybe they thought we were going to go into some sort of war after that. But nobody was buying snacks anymore. The numbers just went way, way down. So the business suffered, and they decided to let a couple of people go and kind of combine and consolidate, condense, take some routes. They lost a few stops, and we just put them together and say, okay, now this driver has these stops and this driver has those stops, and we don't need you anymore. So I happened to be one of them on the chopping block. And I was kind of relieved. I really was. And they did it in a way so that I could get unemployment and they told me that. They said, we're really sorry, but we got to let you go. You can get unemployment until you find something else. So I felt like that was at least enough courtesy to do it, that way instead of just letting me go and fighting it and trying to keep me at the bottom, keep me poverty. They were at least nice about it. They were understanding. They explained themselves, and I appreciated that. I really did. I really did. So I had that until I could find something else. But I'm going to take a real quick break, and I'll be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Now, in the last segment, I just mentioned I had severed ties with the vending company and found myself out of work for a little while, but at least I had unemployment to kind of keep me going until I find something else. And I was just searching and searching and searching for work, and I was unsuccessful for a little while. I started to get worried. I started to get desperate. We managed to buy a house at the time that I was at the last job, and now, found ourselves with things being a little challenging financially. Not bad. I mean, we weren't like starving, and we weren't, hurting, but we just needed a little more income. So I needed to contribute as soon as possible, and I decided to swallow my pride and reach out to the moving company, that I worked with in the past. This was, quite a few years later, and luckily for me, or maybe not, when I reached out to them, they were needing help. They had someone that had just quit, and they really needed some help. So I noticed this time the owners were a little bit older. They were a little calmer. They weren't the hot-headed jerks that they were before. They still had their moments, but it wasn't like last time. So it was a little better. All of us were older, and it was just a little bit easier. A little bit. The work was still hard. The jobs were still just as variant as before, where you were always somewhere different. You never knew if you were going to work a 6-hour day or a 14-hour day. Maybe, I think the most time I'd ever put in was like I got 57 hours in 3 days. It was like, I remember sleeping like 4 hours each night because I would just work first thing in the morning until like midnight. It was rough. But the owners were a little less aggressive. They were a little more lenient on some things. And during the time, I acquired a chauffeur's license. Now, I couldn't drive the big trucks. I couldn't drive the air ride, or I couldn't drive anything that was bigger than 26,000 pounds. So they had a small truck that was under that. And I was able to take that truck and use it for smaller jobs. For the bigger jobs, one of those guys would drive and take us all in that truck, and we would, could handle a lot more. But say if it was like a one-room apartment, I could fit all that stuff into that little truck, and I could do it very well. And at the time when I started there again, there was a team of guys, and one by one, they all left. They all just suddenly copped some attitude and just split. And they all had their reasons. Some of them were dumber than others, but they had their reasons, and they all left. So we would get new people, and we get new people, and there was kind of a turnover of guys. But then I had one guy that worked with me a lot, and after a while, I think he left as well because he was younger and he wanted something better, something easier. I don't blame him at all. But I managed to get my younger brother to work with me, and then another guy. So for a lot of jobs, I was the driver, I was the loader. They were the grunts who would bring the stuff out to me, and then I would wrap it up and load it. And as predicted, as I knew it would be, even though I had hoped for the best, I got the worst out of them. They were rude and obnoxious every chance they got. The one guy, he just he came from a van line, so he felt like he was above everyone. He was always telling me that I was doing things wrong. He was always telling me that I was folding the pads wrong. He was always just criticizing, always, because he knew best. I think he felt like he should have been the driver and he should have been in charge and he should be the one telling everyone what to do. So whenever I would tell him, he would just kind of give me a whole bunch of attitude. He would give me a whole bunch of attitude. Then I had my younger brother who always felt like he was above me no matter what it was, no matter what we were doing. He was going to be snarky. He was going to have an attitude. He was just going to be a jerk because he wanted to be and just because he could. Made it difficult. Both of them made it as difficult as it possibly could be. But yeah, I was being teamed up by two little crybabies who felt that they were above me. And that's rough to deal with. But I'm going to take a real quick break, and I will be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. The last segment I was talking about working at the movie company, working with my brother and this other guy, and things just started to get more and more difficult. For some odd reason, I stayed there again for another 4 years. So I worked for this company for 8 years total, and things were getting really, really slow. Sometimes I would work 16 hours for the entire week, and this happened quite a few weeks in a row. So I got frustrated. There's nothing we can do because we can't force people to move. They call us when they need to move. So I started looking elsewhere, and I found a job with a flooring store that had a lighting store attached. There was two buildings. The flooring store was in the front, and the back was the warehouse, but the warehouse was attached to the lighting store. So they needed help right away. So I left the moving company with no notice. And of course, the one owner threw a fit. He tried to make me feel guilty for leaving them without a notice, which I should not have done. I should have given a notice. I should have let them know I was looking for something else. But I think I was just getting frustrated, and they just had attitudes, and I just didn't feel like telling them because I didn't feel like they deserved to know. And tried to make me feel guilty for it, and started telling me that I was ruining his month. When I asked him, what about my month? When I was working 16 hours a week, what about that? That doesn't matter, huh? Because they had storage, they always had income, so they could sit on their backsides and they would make money because they were just storing stuff just for it being in the warehouse. So they didn't have to worry. They didn't care that I was struggling, but they wanted me make me feel guilty for it, and I left. And it was on bad terms, but again, it was what it was. At least I had something lined up. So I started I started working at this flooring store. Now, at the time they hired me, I was going to be the delivery driver. And there was another guy who was going to be the warehouse manager. So they hired me to be the driver. And the manager at the time, he was going to leave pretty soon. So they wanted him to train me. And then when we would get another warehouse manager, I would train him. Now that's one of the things I have a hard time with, is that I have to train the guy who's going to tell me what to do. I know his job better than him, but I have to let him tell me what to do. I had a hard time with that, but I didn't say anything. I just went along. The guy left. I was doing deliveries, and soon enough, we got another guy come in to be the manager. And I have to say this as well. The manager made 15 an hour. The delivery driver made 13 an hour, which at the time was very good. I was happy with that. But, I had inquired, like, why can't I just move up? If I'm going to have to train somebody, why don't you get someone for a delivery driver and make me the manager? But they didn't want to do that. They already had someone lined up. So I had to train the guy when he showed up. But I'm going to take a real quick break. And I'll be back with a little more of This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. Welcome back to This is Rico trying to heal my inner child. I am on the topic of my past work and jobs, experiences, how they affected me, how they treated me, my perception of things. And in this episode, I'm at the point where I'm working at a flooring and a lighting store. And I did deliveries for both. I would do deliveries for floor for the installers, take it out to sometimes new construction, or sometimes they would be redoing a bathroom in a house. So all I had to do was take out their tile and all the other items, and then just drop it off, and then they did the work. And that was my job, and I was cool with that. And they hired another guy to be the warehouse manager. Now the only problem is this guy was a complete dunce. He was not a good fit. He was quite honestly dumber than a box of rocks. I am not a scholar, and I am not the most intelligent person around, but he was just not getting it at all. Not getting it. I ended up doing half of his work and doing my work. So after a little while, I think they noticed it as well, because I had brought it up to somebody, and they said, yeah, the owner, he talked about it already, and he can tell that he's not a good fit. So they decided to let him go. So I asked them, are you guys going to bring somebody else in, or what are we going to do? I think at that time I also inquired, can I move up into your warehouse manager position, and we can just get another delivery driver, get someone to do that part? And I think they agreed to that, but they were going to start looking for someone, and they told me, we're going to have you do both right for now. You can be the one to unload the trucks and then put everything, data entry into the system, and then organize the warehouse, organize all the stock, do the inventory, and we'll see how it goes. If you do well, then, we can, give you a bump. But they didn't give me the bump right away. And once again, I get to the point of, we'll see how it goes. They should compensate when they give you more responsibility, but A lot of the jobs don't want to do that. They want to promise. They want to promise a bump, and then just not ever follow through. Even when you ask about it, they just kind of give you some lame excuse about why they can't or won't do it. And me, being a big dummy like I was, I decided that, okay, I'll do both. And yeah, let's see how it goes. And things went well. And they did. I do a good job no matter what I'm doing. I am thorough. I am detail oriented. I just pay attention to everything. But of course, they didn't see that. They didn't notice that. They would only nitpick the little negative things, which were very rare, but that's what they would focus on. And they took advantage of me. They just let me do both jobs. I still only was getting paid 13 an hour, which I deserved 15, but he didn't feel like paying that, even though I was doing two people's jobs. I joked I should have been making $28 an hour because I'm doing two people's jobs without help. But they nah, you're good. And I stayed there for 2 years because I thought there was nothing else. I thought this was okay for now. Took the abuse, took them treating me like I was their servant. It's your job, is what I heard a lot. There were so many salespeople, but it was just me, and I had all of it. Excuse me. So I couldn't take it anymore, just like in the past, and I started looking for something else. At the time, we were attending a local church, and you meet a lot of people there, and I had met some people that owned a local candy factory. Now, I don't like to name any names because I don't feel like anybody deserves any free advertising. They know who they are. They don't need me to advertise for them. But after 2 years of backbreaking labor, I wanted to do something else. I was tired of them treating me like a servant. I was tired of just being disrespected. I was tired of being taken for granted. I was tired of them taking advantage of me. So I couldn't take it anymore. So I left. I found another job somewhere else. And, it was all for the better because after no help, no compensation, no appreciation for so long, you can only take that for so long. I just couldn't take it anymore. I'm tired of them all talking to me the way they did. Sometimes I would just get so frustrated and start yelling back at them. And again, I was just kind of blamed for getting upset. Nobody ever asked me why I was upset. They just didn't like that I got upset. And so I left. I just look back on these jobs so far, and I can tell that not having conflict resolution, not knowing how to defend myself, not knowing how to deal with confrontation, when someone would get criticized, sometimes I would just fold and just, oh, okay, I have to work harder because you say so. Instead of defending myself, instead of standing up for myself. And I know this is all connected. The way I let them talk to me the way they did, the way I just, again, rolled with the punches, the way I took all the disrespect, because I didn't know that I deserved respect. I didn't know that I deserved appreciation. I thought this is always how it was because this is how it's always been. And again, it's exhausting. It's exhausting when you think this time will be better and it's not. And it never is so far. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe this will be better. Maybe this time will be better, and it's not. And that's frustrating and that's exhausting and it's just discouraging. Not to mention, I don't know how to stand up for myself. So I let them walk on me. I let them make me do two people's jobs for less pay. So looking back, I wish I would have stood up and told everyone to screw off when I had the chance. I wish I would have stood up for myself and said, I'm not working another day unless you pay me more. I could have done that. And if they didn't want to pay me, I could just leave and I can go find something else. At the time, I was very able and capable to do anything. even though I didn't believe it at the time. I look back and I see that now, the age that I was kind of in my prime of my life, where, physically, a little bit mentally, I was better, even though I was still having my struggles with the things I was talking about. And I was totally capable of doing something else. But instead, I just kind of took it for so long. I worked there for 2 years, and it was just back-breaking physical labor, carrying 70-pound boxes of tile, carrying all this hardwood floor, carrying these 50-pound bags of grout and mortar. It was back-breaking. There were days where my shoulders would hurt, my neck would hurt, my back would hurt, my legs would hurt, but I just did it. I did it, and whenever I needed some help, I was ignored. They didn't feel like I deserved help, even though this was supposed to be a two-man job. So, looking back, I wish I was able to stand up for myself a little better. And, I can't go back and change it, but I do realize now that, I won't take stuff like that anymore. And I know how to stand up for myself now a little better. I still have some challenges with conflict resolution and confrontation, but that's for me to work on as I get older. And that's something for me to realize and work through with these series of videos as well. I have a little better understanding of things looking back, and I don't want to say I regret anything. I don't really, but I just kind of wish I was a little bit different and I would have stood up for myself a little bit more. But anyway, I'm going to conclude this video, and then the next video I'm going to get to the fun of working in a candy factory. But for now, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I love you all, and I thank you for your support. Please like, share, and subscribe, and share it as much as you can. I appreciate all of you, and I will be back very soon with another episode of This is Rico Trying to Heal My Inner Child. Thanks.